I think in health, it's the biggest ROI because we have shortage of doctors, we have shortage of knowledge, we have a lot of problems that are not solved yet. And with LLM and large language model and AI in general, it's possible to solve those issues and also to scale it.
Welcome back to Building with AI, the podcast where we explore how AI is transforming industries and hear directly from the people building the future. This season, we're diving deep into AI in healthcare. What's working, what's challenging, and where the biggest opportunities lie. Today, we're talking about how AI is being integrated into consumer health applications, specifically how it's being used to help millions of women worldwide track their reproductive health. And there's no better guest to break this down than Roman Bugaev, the Chief Technology Officer at Flow, the world's leading women's health app. Flow has over 75 million monthly active users, and 1 in 6 women under 45 in the US use it. It's one of the most widely adopted AI-powered healthcare apps on the market today. In this episode, we're going to explore how Flow uses AI to provide personalized health insights, from cycle tracking to symptom prediction. The unique challenges of AI in healthcare, including ensuring accuracy, avoiding AI hallucinations, and protecting user privacy. Why Flow introduced anonymous mode, and how they use it to ensure compliance with GDPR and other privacy regulations. And how AI in consumer health apps is evolving, and whether it could help bridge gaps in healthcare access worldwide. If you're ever wondering how AI can be responsibly applied in a highly personal, user-facing healthcare app, this episode's for you. Let's dive in. This episode of Building with AI is brought to you by Autoblocks, the company I founded to solve one of the biggest challenges in AI today, making LLMs safe, reliable, compliant, especially in high-stakes industries like healthcare. If you're a company building AI-powered products, whether that's a virtual health assistant, AI-driven documentation, or any LLM handling sensitive information, you know the risks. LLMs hallucinate, they leak sensitive data, and in regulated industries like healthcare, finance, and insurance, compliance isn't just important, it's the law. So what's the challenge? Most companies rely on manual spot checking and vague governance policies. That's not scalable. What you really need is a way to proactively catch AI failures before they happen, before an LLM suggests incorrect medical advice or violates HIPAA compliance. That's where Autoblocks comes in. We're an automated QA and compliance platform for LLM products, purpose-built for regulated industries. With Autoblocks, your team can run structured AI evals, detect risks before deployment, and enforce real-time guardrails in production, all while maintaining auditability and compliance. We're already helping companies like Hinge Health, Pelago Health, and others scale AI safely. If you're building AI for healthcare, finance, or any industry where safety and compliance matters, you need to be using Autoblocks. Go to autoblocks.ai to learn more or book a demo today. Again, that's autoblocks.ai, the trust layer for AI in regulated industries. Now, back to the episode. Roman, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. So for those unfamiliar, can you give a quick introduction to yourself and also Flow?
Yeah, sure. So currently I'm Chief Technology Officer at Flow, and Flow is one of the largest and probably the most successful health and fitness app in the world. We have 75 million of monthly active users, and our mission is to empower women, harness the power of their body signals, and we empowers them with knowledge about their bodies. And the main function of the app that we've created is a period tracker. But on top of that, we have a lot of other features like symptom checkers. We have community where people can discuss safely and privately health topics related to female body. We also have many other features like pregnancy tracker. Currently, we are working on a perimenopause mode. We have feature to track sleep and many, many more. We have integration with wearable devices to capture signals from wearable devices. And we also use a lot of advanced tools like chatbots inside to make app very engaging for end users. The whole goal is to decrease the gap between general health, which is very well explored and very well served, and female health, which was underserved for many years. And basically, we are focused on this female health topic specifically.
So tell us more about what has made Flow so successful. You mentioned 75 million monthly active users. That's incredible. That's a massive amount of users. So What has contributed to the success?
I think, first of all, we are working in a very important topic, and that is why when you do something important, you have users who use this. But we also did some things differently from other apps. There are a lot of like period trackers on the market. Apple released period tracker a couple of years ago. There are other niche players, bigger or smaller, but we are different. And the reason why we are different, because we invested a lot into product development. We invested, like, I think to date, maybe a couple of hundreds millions of dollars into building the product. And basically we have the best user experience. We have a lot of content. We have a lot of different kind of personalization features where we're serving different users in a very different way. And we also built like a habit loops. So whenever users track symptom inside the app, we provide them something in return, some health insight, some suggestions, some advice. And basically it creates a habit of using the app. And because of that, our user base is growing as a snowball. So instead of having this leaking bucket where you acquire new users, they use your app for months or two. We also call it a gym syndrome, where you have some users who install health and fitness apps they use for a couple of months, but then they churn. In our apps, they stay because they see values. They build this habit to use app maybe not every day, but like at least once per week, because they know that while they use this app, they will get like value. And because of that, they kind of return to the app. And basically, as a snowball, our user base is growing and we have more and more users who stick to the app because of these habit loops that we've created. So I believe this is important. But another angle that I mentioned at the beginning is also very important. We are working in a very important topic and very important underserved topic. So not a lot of other companies invest into this topic, and we believe that this is our mission to close this gap, and to invest more.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when you're talking about some of those viral loops and the feedback loops that you've created to get users to use the application on a regular basis, I'm assuming personalization is part of that appeal as well. And I know from a lot of your reviews and from the feedback that folks have left about Flow, personalization is a really big part of what makes the application so appealing and so valuable to its users. And so, can you talk a bit about AI and how it first became a key part of Flow's product strategy, and how has that evolved over time?
You're absolutely right. Personalization is the key for our success. And the reason behind this is that we are focused on one topic, which is female health, but the topic itself is huge. And all humans, they different. All users, they slightly different. They of a different age. They live in different countries. They have slightly different goals. Maybe some users want to become pregnant. Some others want to avoid pregnancy. Some others want to learn about the body because they learning, experiencing something new and they never experienced this before. So every user is unique, and that is why we need to treat them differently. And basically, first thing that we did at Floor, we implemented cycle prediction model. Basically, we use like machine learning models for that. And this model is tailored towards a particular user. And we believe that this is one of the reasons why we are successful. We basically predict cycles with very great accuracy. And the reason behind this is that we have good models, and these models were trained on millions of users. So basically, it's like unique situation, actually, when you have this real world data and you can learn from every unique pattern that is existing in the world, and you can adjust your models based on these patterns. And then once you see some users that are similar to previous patterns, let's say, you can serve them in a most personal way. And this is just one model, but this is one of the core models. It's a traditional ML model. It's not generative AI. So currently we use cut boost models, but basically the idea here is that we use a lot of data points, we train on these data points models, but then this cycle prediction model becomes a cornerstone of other models. Whether we need to show this content or that content depends on where you are in your cycle and whether your cycle will start tomorrow or today. So basically it becomes this very important data point for other models. And we have a lot of these models. Whether we need to send push notifications in the morning or in the evening also depends on a particular behavior of the user. Maybe some users are busy in the morning and they prefer evening push notifications about features or content. Some other users, they different, and they prefer to do the health and fitness routines in the morning, so they prefer push notification in the morning. But there are a lot of things that we take into account, but the most important is cycle predictions, symptom predictions. When you know user very well, then you can adjust your kind of strategy and your personalization towards a particular user. And we are doing a lot of things with AI, with more traditional AI for that. Because what we learned very early is that it's almost impossible to create rules for every user. We try to do that, but it's impossible. It's like thousands and thousands of rules. If user in this age, but also in this country, and also knows this and behave in this way, do that. You need a lot of such rules, and it's not scalable when you have millions and millions of users around the world.
It makes a lot of sense moving from rules to supervised machine learning. And now we have this hype and this excitement around generative AI and LLMs and diffusion models and how they're being used to generate content that's extremely personalized. What does that shift look like over at Flow? So you've been in the supervised ML game for quite some time, using it for predictive modeling. How does that interact with and bleed into some of the work that you're doing on the generative AI side?
First of all, currently we do a lot of things with generative AI. First things that we tried is we have a lot of content in our app. So like different stories, articles, some videos, and so on. And before that, it was all created by humans. But now we use a lot of AI and generative AI models to help humans to create this content. And we believe it's very important to invest into this area because let's say we have like 50 content managers who work on content. They can cover a couple of segments at a time. But when they empowered with generative AI, they can do much more. And for example, if we are covering sleep topic, we can cover the sleep topic differently for those who are in perimenopause, for those who maybe for teenagers, for those who are pregnant, because the sleep is the same, but every segment of the user's experiences sleep differently. And you need a lot of personalization, a lot of kind of very similar but slightly different content should be created. This is where AI helps a lot. And for sure, we have humans in the loop because unfortunately, generative AI still can generate some not the best results due to hallucinations, due to some kind of limitations of the technology. But when you have human in the loop, when you have a medical expert in the loop, where you have a professional content manager in the loop, they can correct those issues. And it's much easier to adjust slightly content rather than to create it from the scratch. Especially when it comes to image generation, it takes hours to create like an image. It takes maybe a couple of seconds to generate an image. And then you can tweak it a little bit in Photoshop or I don't know, whatever tools used by people who professional in image creation. But it's much easier to adjust content piece, whether it's text or image, rather than to create it from the scratch. And also generative AI may help us to automate some of the medical checks, some of the content checks that we already have. For example, if we have a rule that content should be supportive, we can task AI model to check whether this particular piece is supportive, whether it's maybe judgmental or maybe kind of criticize the user. And we don't want that. We can create these rules and we can task LLM models to check against certain rules. Again, you still need humans in the loop, but when humans empowered by generative AI, they can do much more and much better. And we see this in real numbers. Currently, the same content team, but with AI tools, can generate up to 10 to 12 times more content within the same period of time. And the quality of this content is much greater. We did some A/B tests. We do a lot of A/B tests. Right now, we have around like 400 A/B tests per quarter, but we checked through A/B test content that was created just by humans against content that was created by humans with AI. And we see that engagement, retention, CTR, all the metrics are much higher in content where we have humans with AI. And it's easy to explain because AI can process much more insight to generate content. It may create much more variations. It may help you to spot the issues that are easy to miss because the humans, and they make mistakes. So we see a lot, tremendous opportunity here, but we also see a lot of great results. And this is just one area where we use generative AI. It's content generation, and we use AI to generate different types of content. It's visuals. It's kind of something that you never think that it's a content. Like, for example, our onboarding is partially generated by AI. It's a set of screens where we ask different questions, and based on the questions, we ask a different set of questions. Our goal is to onboard the user and also to personalize the first session for this user. It's also partially generated by AI with humans in the loop. But we also have even bigger game with generative AI. So at Flow, we use chatbots for some time already. We found that humans and users, they really enjoy this kind of interaction that looks like talking to some other person. And I think it works because if you ask someone to explain what's wrong, it will be a really hard job for them. But if you ask, like, do you have issue here? Do you have pain here? Have you experienced that? Do you have a family history of these issues? Well, humans or women's in general, like all humans, they very good at answering questions. And this is the same what general practitioners do. You go to the doctor, ask questions, and then based on your answers, they route you to a next doctor until the issue is solved. We try to mimic this real world interaction through chatbots. We've created a lot of chatbots, and we already have a lot of users who experience chatbots on every day basis. We have a lot of revenue from chatbot feature and so on. But these chatbots currently, they based on decision trees. So it's very prescriptive feature where we know exactly what kind of questions we ask, and we have like very few options how particular user can answer this question. So for example, we may ask like some questions with yes, no options, and then user says yes, we go through a different route. Then we ask another question, user asks differently, we route these users to a different set of questions or answers. With generative AI, we can create much more personal experience where people can answer questions in their own words, and they express much more nuanced situations. For example, one of the examples that I've seen, we have a little small experiment with generative AI on a small percentage of our users. And I've seen that, again, I don't see like a particular user data, but I have access to this anonymized version of this dialogue. And basically what I've seen is that users said, chatbot, I don't sleep well. And then chatbot said, well, I'm not an expert here. I'm not a replacement for a medical expert, but we can talk about this issue. And chatbot asked a lot of questions. And one of the questions was whether user faced any lifestyle changes recently. And the user said, yes, I recently experienced change. I have a puppy in my house. And then chatbot asked, okay, what is the issue here? It's a beautiful moment for you in your house. And the user said, well, I'm not sleeping well because puppy requires attention. It's noisy and so on. And then chatbot provided some suggestions how to improve the sleep, but also explain how sleep connected to cycle, and that bad sleep habits may result into irregularities with the cycles, like women's cycles. And basically, chatbot navigated through this very nuanced situation where in some household we have a puppy, because of that, a sleep disturbed. And it's almost impossible to script this kind of scenario because there are so many situations. It's very hard to predict any possible kind of scenario. But with such generative AI chatbots, well, it's a very powerful tool and very powerful technology, but it's with great power comes great responsibility. We as a company and we as a kind of society, we need to invest a lot into medical safety, medical correctness of these chatbots, and it's not an easy task.
Yeah, so I want to dig into that a bit more. You mentioned there's a couple of areas where you're using generative AI. One is on the content generation front, and then the other one is more in enabling this natural language conversational flow for your users, no pun intended. So now the first part where you mentioned that you have the content creators and they're human in the loops that are augmented with AI. Can you describe like exactly what you mean by human in the loop?
So basically humans, they involved into all stages of this content generation. From the beginning, they're in charge of helping like generating ideas. Okay, whether we want to talk about sleep, or maybe we want to talk about some nutrition topic or something like that. And then basically humans, they do like some research first. They might explore the internet. They may create a list of reference materials that they found in the internet, and they believe that this is a good materials. Maybe it's some article from World Health Organization. Maybe it's an article from some other place like Wikipedia. They instruct the model what they expect from the model, like what kind of content, whether it will be more visual content or more like an article, what is good resources for this article, where we need to put attention. Maybe they can also help to describe the personas, like whether it's a teenager or more adult human. But basically, they help to set up the environment for the model. Then generation happens, and basically our experts, they now in charge of a different thing. Now they in charge of ensuring that the content that was produced is actually of a good quality. And good quality means different things. It's right tone of voice, it's right quality of sentences, proofreading is important, but also medical safety, correctness, up to date of information that is provided in these articles. And what we've done, we've created the tools where people who do this job, they empowered with the tools as well. So for example, we can fact check some of the things automatically, and we can color code the text into green, yellow, orange, and we can show text in this color coded way to the expert. And we would say, you need to check everything, but pay special attention to this orange and yellow areas. And for green areas, we believe that it's factually correct. Here is a reference, you can double check, and you need to double check this reference, but it's a safe zone. And then sometimes if we see that we have a lot of this, let's say, red color in the content, we just can reject this entirely. And sometimes it's just better to start from the scratch rather than to fix everything. But you see here, we've created tools to fact check the content. We created tools to color code where we see some risks. And humans, they still do their jobs. They do their research. They check references, what kind of reference used, whether it's trusted source or not. But they have a lot of tools to do their job much more effectively. And also they can do this job with a better quality and faster. Yeah. And then once it goes to production, then humans also in charge of checking how people who use the app react to this content. And then they can start the loop from the start. They can say, okay, this content, we need to improve it. Or maybe this content is good, let's keep it. Yeah, so basically, I think they involved on all stages, and basically this is a function of humans in the loop.
So just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, you have the humans in the loop reviewing those outputs. There's confidence levels associated with different parts of the output to help them focus on the areas which you may have deemed to be most uncertain. And then they provide feedback on the accuracy and maybe a couple of other criterion related to those outputs. And that's used to modify the generation prompt and system in some form or another so that you can make sure that users that are using it in production are getting the best possible results. And then you monitor in production to see if it's actually working and if there's any issues that you may not have addressed during the testing phase. Is that correct? You're taking that feedback and somehow using it to improve the actual system?
Exactly. Because if we see some type of mistakes again and again, we can change the prompts to avoid these mistakes in the first place. Or for example, if we know that some prompts produce a better quality of more engaging content, we can say, okay, this particular kind of prompt is better. Let's try to use it as much as possible. And we socializing this knowledge, and we also have a system to manage those prompts. You're absolutely right. It's very important to also incorporate feedback loops from actual users as well. So if we see that users are actually liking some content more, we can feed this back into prompt system or like our generation pipelines, and it will create even better content. And this is quite unique. And for that, you need a lot of users, because basically this feedback loop, they will be different for different users. Like teenagers, they prefer different tone of voice from like adult users and so on. And if you don't have enough users, it will be very noisy data. It will be impossible to feed this back. But if you have huge audience like we have, you can create a system that will be constantly improving and learning from millions of users, and it will become better and better over time. And I think it's also our unique advantage. It's almost impossible to replicate this user base, because you need these users basically in first place in order to replicate this. And this is, I think it's quite an...
It's like data moat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I know Flow isn't classified as a HIPAA regulated entity, but you had talked about the importance of safety and accuracy when it comes to outputs from these LLMs. Let's say for the chatbot, how are you ensuring that the outputs are safe and accurate and you're preventing any issues?
So in our case, we have an internal team of medical experts. We're also using some external platforms to hire medical experts specialized in particular topics. And basically, we work with these medical experts to create like a system of quality for a particular topic, for a particular type of content. And for example, for chatbots, we have a separate work stream where we have dedicated medical experts who understand the kind of challenges of a particular format. And then we create these chatbots in vertical topics. Let's say we take a cycle as the first topic, then we create like an evaluation and benchmark for this topic. When we have a model which is good, we do extensive testing of this model. For example, we can hire a lot of medical professionals and we task them to check outputs of these models against certain criteria, whether it's correct, medically safe content, and they can risk this from 1 to 5, let's say. And we can do this at quite large scale. So currently, for example, we are doing this exercise for one of our models, and we have a task to score 12,000 of conversations that were generated and to assign like a certain medical safety and correctness scores to this. It's quite a big task. It takes months and a lot of people to label this type of conversations, but it's very important to do that. And the goal here is to change the system until you have really good quality. But then once you have good quality in the lab, you did like your lab testing and you're satisfied with the quality, you have a release candidate. Our current process specifies that we also need to do this monitoring in production. So when we have conversations between humans and chatbots, we observe how it behaves, and then we learn from this. And for example, in our traditional chatbots, we have a feature which is called symptom checker. And one of the symptoms that we're checking is whether user has a polycystic ovary syndrome. It's a big health issue. We designed a chatbot that can spot polycystic ovary syndrome signals. And then this chatbot can ask a couple of questions for the user. And then based on the answer, this chatbot may say whether there is a high risk of polycystic ovary syndrome or small. But we never make actual diagnosis. We ask people to go to the doctor to validate everything. But after this conversation with the doctor, we ask, okay, what was the outcome? And we can get this information from real users, and we can improve system based on this like real world scenarios, and we can improve chatbots. And we do this like constantly. And basically the system become better and better over time. And in this way, we can have quality which is very high. It's almost impossible for humans to reach this type of quality because, for example, medical doctor or whoever, they have certain education, they have certain memory, they probably did their best studying like certain health conditions and so on. But it's not the same as having knowledge of multiple experts and knowledge from real world kind of data. I think we are positioned here to advance the medical field much more. And again, we are currently not a medical device. We are trying to avoid this heavy medical topics because we're still building the systems, but we already see some good promising results from this work.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And so that's on the medical accuracy of the outputs from these LLM applications. And I appreciate how you clarified that you're not actually making any diagnoses because that's dangerous to trust an LLM to be able to do that. But you may be able to lead folks to look into something and see an actual physician to validate certain things that the LLM may suspect. On the flip side, there's also a challenge of user privacy. And I'm curious how you're balancing AI-driven personalization with user trust and data security.
This topic is very important for us. We believe that privacy is fundamental human right. And we designed our application with privacy in mind. So we have anonymous mode in our app. And basically when user in anonymous mode, we don't have any even technical identifiers that can lead to a particular person. We don't have access to IP address. We don't have access to device identifiers like ADFA and so on. And basically it creates this safe space for user to be quite open with us. And it's just one of the features. We also have other features like pin code. We have Face ID, encryption. Recently, we even implemented post-quantum encryption. And the idea here is that with all this advancement with quantum computing, someone can take quantum computer and can decrypt whatever traffic goes between app and servers. So we also implemented this post-quantum encryption, which is impossible to crack even if you have a quantum computer. So we invest a lot into privacy. We also ISA certified in terms of security and privacy. So we do a lot of things on privacy. But with AI in particular, it's not an easy job and it requires a lot of efforts. And our current vision, let's say, for this is that like in ideal world, you need to protect AI models from seeing this personal information in the first place. If model sees something personal, it's impossible to make it unseen, this information. So we're very focused on this part where we identify personal information, where we design a system in a way that we don't have this information in the first place. And basically, we are trying to avoid this information as much as possible. And because of that, our AI models are also safe. We also designed a very good process around training models, like what kind of data points we use, how we use these data points, whether it's appropriate to use these data points for particular models. We work with our privacy office, our data protection officers. She is also best data protection officer according to last survey that was done in Europe. So we have best people working on this, and it's quite a job. Yeah, it requires efforts, but we are doing good.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tactical tip there, is identifying any sensitive data before it's fed into the LLM to notify the user so that they can make modifications, or maybe stripping that sensitive data before sending it to an LLM, because like you said, there's no closing Pandora's box once you already open it. Okay, so I'm curious to learn about bias. Does bias play a big role in how you think about deploying LLMs in user-facing ways?
So I think a lot of frontier LLM models, they quite good already, and they do a lot of things to unbiased model. Still, our world is biased, and the models are trained on basically world data. So I think it's impossible to say that those models unbiased completely. So we do our effort as well, and we have a special testing for bias. It's a little bit easier for us because we are very specialized on a particular topics, and we can design tests in a very kind of specific way to detect bias, whether it's a bias related to race, or whether it's bias related to age, or any other bias. We can detect this very easily because we know that our space is limited, and we can design for that, and we can spot this. It's much harder job when you need to design LLM model for any questions, the same as like ChatGPT or Gemini do. It too many topics, too many possible biases that you need to detect. These frontier models, they're doing their best. But for us, it's much easier because we are dealing with smaller space. But it requires special effort to detect this bias, and also to change models to unbias them, basically, either through prompt engineering, or if it's a RAG model, you need to feed a special content which will cover these topics that are biased, or even through fine-tuning. So it's a dedicated effort, and everyone should be paying attention to bias, because I think it might be quite dangerous.
Yeah, it's a really tricky problem to solve when it comes to LLMs. And one of the things that we're actually working on through my company is using simulation-based testing to identify bias. So taking a bunch of simulated test cases across a bunch of different dimensions, maybe demographics being one of them, and assessing the performance of the model across those different dimensions to see if there's any disparities. That's been a promising line of work, but it's a really difficult problem to solve. Arguably much harder in the world of LLMs than supervised ML.
But even in supervised training, it was not that easy. And again, advantage of Flow is that we have a lot of users, and we can see those users who different, and then we can learn from this and we can improve systems. For example, we recently found that like cycle length depends on country. And it's not the most obvious dependency, but if you think about it, it kind of makes sense because different countries, they have different education, they have different level of healthcare, they have different food, different environment. They probably experience stress slightly different in different moments. Maybe it's an election year and maybe everyone is crazy about elections, or maybe something else happening. Maybe the weather is bad in this particular moment. So country is actually quite a significant data point, even for traditional model. But now imagine the same, but in a LLM world, it's even bigger. Yes, it's very interesting topic and not very easy.
Okay, so there's obviously a lot of talk about AI. We've talked a lot about AI during this podcast as well. And it seems like these initiatives are successful. How have you seen the hype of LLMs versus the ROI of LLMs?
Well, I see a couple of fields where there is a great ROI. I think engineering or like software development is one of those, and GitHub Copilot, a great example. Cursor, another great example where LLM models and in general generative AI help a lot to increase productivity. Customer support, another big topic. Content production, again, big topic. I think it's also different by verticals. I think we benefit more in verticals that are expensive by nature. Like, for example, where you need a lot of human capital to tackle some of the problems. In those areas, LLMs, they have a higher ROI. Let's say we are using LLM models to summarize some article or to fix grammar in some sentences, well, it's good, especially for me. I'm not a native speaker, but it's not the same. Probably can be achieved differently with better ROI, or even maybe it's not problems that should be solved in the first place. But I think in health, it's the biggest ROI because basically we have shortage of doctors, we have shortage of knowledge, we have a lot of problems that not solved yet. And with LLM and large language model and AI in general, it's possible to solve those issues and also to scale it, especially in those countries that need this the most, like developing countries. And we at Flow, we also doing a lot in this area. And recently we launched pro-social campaign where we said that, well, our Flow app will be free of charge in 50 or like almost like 60 countries around the world. It's mainly India, Nigeria, some other countries, but I think it's very important to give knowledge, to give tools in those countries. And with AI, we can do that. Without AI, it's impossible. You can't hire enough people to cover every possible problem. So like you need AI to solve these issues. And I think that is why I expect the highest ROI in health, let's say. And I think I'm not alone here. Bill Gates, everyone is talking about the same, that the biggest ROI will be in health.
Yeah, absolutely. And AI-driven apps like Flow are really helping to bridge the healthcare gaps that we're seeing. So it's really exciting to see. What's been the biggest challenge from the AI lens so far at Flow? Specifically curious about LLMs. What's been the biggest challenge so far?
I think the biggest challenge so far is, well, we are doing something which was never done before. Supervised learning is easy. You have a lot of experts on the market who done this like, I know, 10 years ago and maybe 20 years ago. But this large language models, they're different and they require slightly different tools, slightly different experts, different approaches, and you need to upskill people internally to deal with those. So I think this is the biggest challenge. You need to upskill people. You need to invent new approach to work with models, to train the models, to improve the models. And I think another big challenge that I see is that hallucination, it's not solved problem. Well, I also like this idea that humans hallucinate as well, and maybe even more than some AI models. Like all doctors did mistakes, it's just natural. I think we need to find a way how to deal with it in a way that will be safe, but also I think we just need to accept some certain level of hallucination and just work around it. Like maybe we need to change user interface, maybe we need to educate people, maybe we need to invent tools that will be triple checking any response from the LLM model, but we just need to accept that LLMs hallucinate, and then we need to build systems on top to avoid any risks related to this. And I think Google and ChatGPT, I like these comments. We make mistakes. Like they write this on a main screen of ChatGPT and Gemini bot. And I think it's important just to know that, well, these tools, they can make mistakes. And once you know that they can make mistakes, you can deal with this properly. You can validate, you don't make wrong conclusions based on the answers. You don't rush to do certain changes just because LLM model said to you. But it's still very important to have these tools because they feed you like important insights and they can help you to deal with some issues.
Some great tactical advice there. What are you most looking forward to on Flow's AI roadmap?
So I think for me, the most interesting development happens in chatbot field. So basically, we aim to cover much more topics with greater accuracy, with greater personalization. But I think we also want to make those chatbots proactive. We don't want to wait while users will ask questions. We want to answer the questions that are not asked, so basically, I think this proactive approach is the most exciting for me. And I think it will work much better than any other approach where you need to wait for users to do certain actions. So proactive chatbots, I think this is the most interesting for me. And the way how it will work, I think we have a lot of good sensors right now, like Apple Watch, Oura Ring, Samsung Ring, like a lot of sensors on human body. You can read from these sensors and you can, based on the signals from the sensors, you can start talking to people, you can start asking questions, you can start feed the information, insights, and basically in this proactive way, you can solve much more problems much more effectively.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So if your Apple Watch senses that your heart rate's a bit high and you log into the Flow app, maybe it'll strike up a conversation asking you and trying to figure out what the root cause of that elevated heart rate might be. Is that what you're imagining?
Yeah, this is exactly what we see.
Yeah, very interesting. What advice would you have to other companies that are building consumer-facing products in the healthcare space that are looking to integrate AI into their applications or products?
So my advice here is, first of all, focus on very small problems. If you go too wide, it will be super expensive. It's impossible to build while you're a startup and you have limited resources. So try to narrow down the problem as much as possible to keep it useful, but small. And then I think if it's small enough problem, it's possible to create good models. It's possible to ensure safety, accuracy, and so on. But if you go wide, then it will be hard to impossible to do this. So I think this focus on a narrow topic is very important. And I think this is exactly what we do at Flow. We are not solving all issues in the world. We are focused on very specific niche problems, but our goal is to be the best tool on the market for this niche problem.
That's great advice.
And our niche is not that small niche, but it's a different story. Yeah.
Roman, where can people find you or learn more about Flow and any other resources that you want to share?
Yeah, we have a great website, flow.health. Feel free to explore this website. I also encourage everyone to subscribe to our LinkedIn page. We post a lot of insights, especially Dmitry Gursky, our CEO, he likes to share. We believe that sharing is caring. We share a lot of insights. If we learn something, we always share this with the audience in LinkedIn. And also feel free to add myself to LinkedIn. I will be happy to answer questions or just to have a conversation about topics.
We'll link to all of those links in the show description below. Roman, thank you so much for joining the show and best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
This episode of Building with AI is brought to you by Autoblocks, the company I founded to solve one of the biggest challenges in AI today, making LLMs safe, reliable, compliant, especially in high-stakes industries like healthcare. If you're a company building AI-powered products, whether that's a virtual health assistant, AI-driven documentation, or any LLM handling sensitive information, you know the risks. LLMs hallucinate, they leak sensitive data, and in regulated industries like healthcare, finance, and insurance, compliance isn't just important, it's a law. So what's the challenge? Most companies rely on manual spot checking and vague governance policies. That's not scalable. What you really need is a way to proactively catch AI failures before they happen, before an LLM suggests incorrect medical advice or violates HIPAA compliance. That's where Autoblocks comes in. We're an automated QA and compliance platform for LLM products, purpose-built for regulated industries. With Autoblocks, your team can run structured AI evals, detect risks before deployment, and enforce real-time guardrails in production, all while maintaining auditability and compliance. We're already helping companies like Hinge Health, Pelago Health, and others scale AI safely. If you're building AI for healthcare, finance, or any industry where safety and compliance matters, you need to be using Autoblocks. Go to autoblocks.ai to learn more or book a demo today. Again, that's autoblocks.ai, the trust layer for AI in regulated industries.